Hey guys, welcome to another video. In today's video, we are going to be talking about some eyeshadow palettes, but specifically eyeshadow palettes that I passed on. I did not end up purchasing these and I have no regrets. I was inspired to film this video after watching Amy Loves Makeup's video. That sounded a little interesting coming out. But after I watched Amy Loves Makeup film a video similar to this one, I decided to take a look at some popular talked about palettes that I ended up passing on, and I wanted to let you know you don't have to purchase everything that comes around. So these are my non-regrets. I will have Amy listed down below. I also know that Samantha March is known for doing a whole regret series, so I will have her listed down below. And if you are new here, hello, my name is Kelly. I love all things makeup and beauty. I love talking, I love makeup, I love talking about makeup, so if you like to chat about makeup too, I would love to have you subscribe and be part of the K Bella fam. But why don't we go ahead and start talking about some eyeshadow. Okay, so I did scoot over just a bit so that I can insert pictures of these palettes because, like I said, I do not own these palettes and I'm not mad about it. The first palette being the Natasha Denona Triochrome or Triochrome. I think it's Triochrome, the Triochrome palette. There were so many people who were so excited to see Natasha Denona branching out and jumping into color. And I too was excited to see her do something different because we had her bronze and her glam. We have her mini nudes. She's been sticking with the neutrals. So this time around, we have some beautiful pastel matte shades, and then the stars of the show were supposed to be those three triochromes. Well, I don't know if they're supposed to be duochromes and it's a triochrome because there's three of them. Either way, there were chrome shades in the middle. I know a ton of my YouTube friends were very excited for this palette to come out. They were able to snag it and film videos on it, but I passed on it. I passed on it because it just wasn't my color story, and with Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes being so expensive, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think this was one of her $65 palettes. I do think it was $125 or $129, and so I was like, if I'm gonna spend that kind of money on an eyeshadow palette, I better be using it every single time I'm doing my makeup. And I knew that this wouldn't be the case for me, so I ended up skipping over it. And after watching reviews, I think people who are eyeshadow connoisseurs or who love Natasha Denona, I think they were happy to add this to their collection, but it didn't seem like so many people had their socks knocked off by this palette. I feel like a lot of people were kind of let down, not so with the quality, but those shimmer shades. I heard a lot of people say that Indie does duochrome and triochrome and multichromes better. So overall, I am not sad. I'm gonna say this a lot. I am not sad that I passed over this palette, but I'll be interested to know any of these palettes that I'm talking about today. Do you have them? Do you have any regrets over purchasing them, regrets over not purchasing them, or are you fine with your decision? In this case, I was fine with my decision. This next palette, I kind of went back and forth on because it was a collaboration between ColourPop and Raw Beauty Christy, her At Forest Sight palette. I love Christy. I think she is super talented. I think she's hilarious. I love her wit and her humor. And I actually purchased her first collab with Pure, but I decided that wasn't my color story and I wasn't going to get use out of it, so I never opened it, I never swatched it or anything. I just threw it in a giveaway. And so when this came around, I was kind of like, ooh, I want to support Christy again. It's ColourPop. But the color story, I just didn't really think that it was something unique enough that I needed to add it to my collection. You have if you look going down a row of brown and greens, and then you have some yellows, and then the rest are mattes. There are only two shimmer shades. I love shimmers. I don't typically work with colors that are this deep on a day-to-day basis. And while I was very happy for Christy, I ended up passing on this palette, and I still think it's a beautiful palette. I do enjoy most of the ColourPop eyeshadows that I've tried. I do think that their formula can be different from time to time. But the palettes that I have in my collection, like the Limoncello palette, I really love that one. So I have no doubt that this formula was amazing, and I'm sure it was super exciting for Christy, but I think had I purchased this palette, it literally would have just sat on a shelf. And I don't want my makeup to be sitting on a shelf. I want to be using it. Huda Beauty is a brand that I go back and forth with time and time again. Like, their releases always catch my eye, but then I never end up like making a purchase. Until recently, over Christmas, my husband did purchase the Huda Beauty Naughty Nudes palette for me, and I do really enjoy that eyeshadow palette. I like the formula. However, I don't think that her shimmers are my favorite. When she came out with her, I think it was like the whole haze collection, I had my eye on the khaki haze. It's more of this like olivey, like earthy type of shades. And so I thought, this is a color story that I could get down with. I want to try more Huda Beauty. It's a 9-pan eyeshadow palette, nice and compact, easy to travel with, easy to grab. And then I started watching reviews, which I like to do, even though I'm a YouTuber. I like to watch reviews before I bite the bullet and make a purchase. And a lot of people were not impressed with the shimmer shades. A lot of people said that they were more like toppers and they weren't super pigmented. And that's something, as someone who loves shimmer on their eyes, that's something that was a little disappointing to me. So I think it's a fair price point at $29, and I know a lot of people who ended up purchasing this palette said that they liked it. It wasn't necessarily a dislike, but for me, I think that I would have been disappointed, so I think it was a smart choice that I ended up passing over this palette. But I was really tempted and super close to purchasing it a couple times. I am someone who can get FOMO, fear of missing out. I like to be included. I like to have all of the things. I like to be in the circle, know what's going on. So when Melt Cosmetics came out with the Beetlejuice collection, I knew right away that neither one of the color stories spoke to me, that I wouldn't get use out of the palettes, and that I should pass on them. But so many of my friends on YouTube were so excited about this release that it literally made me think about it for a minute. And I was like, should I get these palettes? Should I push myself out of my comfort zone? Do I need to try Melt Formula? In the end, I ended up passing on both of them, and I'm really happy that I did. I definitely don't think I would have gotten any use out of the bottom in the picture, the one with like the reds and the grays. I know that my friend Heather Austin picked up both of these palettes and she loves them and she thinks they're amazing. She really likes the quality, and so I think that's awesome that the quality is there. I just know, like, I might have played with like the yellows, purples, and greens like once or twice, but it wouldn't have been a palette that I would have reached for. And I want to try Melt. I want to get into their eyeshadow formula and try some more from them. But this color story was not a Kelly color story, and I'm glad that I ultimately passed over it. If you are new here, I do not like glitter. I do have some sparkle on my eyes. I like sparkle, I like shimmer, I don't like glitter. So when Urban Decay came out with their Stoned Vibes eyeshadow palette, I was like, first of all, it looks very pretty. I was not a fan of the packaging with like the chunky glitter on the top, but inside it looks very pretty. You do have 4 mattes there, but then you have like 8 chunky glitter shades. I knew right off the bat, that's not for me. Chunky glitter, not for me, so I knew I was going to pass over it. I heard a lot of good things about this eyeshadow palette when people started receiving theirs and purchasing it and using it, and the looks were really pretty. I know there are several people out there who are very happy with this palette, but as someone who is not a glitter lover, I'm glad that I didn't let the FOMO suck me in with this one, because there's no way. There's no way I would have wanted to put those shades on my eyes with all of the chunks and the glitter, and this was a good decision, a good pass for me. Now, a lot of people were really excited when Juvia's Place came out with the Wahala 2 palette. It's a larger palette. You have a wide variety of like blues and greens, but you also have some orange and pink, a pop of purple. You have like a row of silvery shades. I think color lovers everywhere were really excited about this. I saw tons of reviews where people were loving this eyeshadow palette, and I thought about it. I thought about it for a minute and I thought, you know what, if I want to play with some color, a ton of people rave about the Juvia's Place formula. This could be the color palette for me. But I thought about it long and hard, and blues just aren't, they're just not my vibe, which is ironic because I'm wearing like an aqua blue eye today. I am playing with the Avocado Toast palette. That should be up now. If it is, I will link the video here if you want to check that out. But overall, blues are not typically my vibe. I go more, if I'm gonna play with color, I wanna play with like pinks or greens or like a pop of purple. But I stick more to the neutral zone. So these didn't have enough neutrals for me and I ended up passing over it. And I'm glad that I passed over it because it is a very large palette, and although it is beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, I would have played maybe with that 5th row of oranges and maybe a little bit of the pinks, and that's it. And that really just would have been a waste. Another Natasha Denona eyeshadow palette. Now don't get me wrong, I like my Natasha Denona bronze palette. I like it. I love my Natasha Denona glam, but I passed over the full-size Natasha Denona Zendo palette. Now, I know when she came out with her mini Zendo, a lot of people were hoping for a Zendo palette to release, and then we got this palette here, which if you look at the first section of like 9 toward the left, those look like shades that I would use. You have like some neutral shades, some reds, some pinks, golds, like I can get down with that. And then you have 2 rows next to those where you have more of like, it looks like maybe an aqua shade in there or a mint shade. And so you have a variety. You have a warm toned side and a cool toned side. I considered this one. I considered it because it was one of her $65 palettes, and like I said, those first 9 shades really spoke to me, but I waited, I held off, I watched some reviews, and overall I felt like a lot of the people whose reviews I was watching, they felt like the formula was a little bit different. They seemed a little bit disappointed. They weren't as excited for this eyeshadow palette once they had it in their hands as they thought they were going to be. So overall, I'm happy that I passed on it. I don't hear too many people talking about it right now. I don't know if the formula was different. I don't know. I know a lot of people spoke on the shimmers thinking that they just weren't as punchy as they expected. So I was gonna branch out, but I'm glad I didn't, and I'm glad I passed on this one. Another palette whose color story didn't speak to me, but I considered it, was Wayne Goss, his Holiday 2020 collection. Now, he came out with an eyeshadow palette and it had 6 shades. You had like a bright orange, 2 grays, then it looked like a shimmery silver shade, a black, and then like a bright blue that looks similar to the blue that I have on my eyes. I have not tried anything from Wayne Goss yet. I've heard a ton of people talking about him, and a lot of people were really excited for this palette. When I first saw it, I was like, I don't know what the excitement is about because it just looks very gray to me. But a lot of people were excited. I saw several people create beautiful looks with this palette, and I considered it. I considered it just to try out Wayne Goss. I considered it because I thought the blue would be fun to play with. I wanted to challenge myself a little bit, but in the end, I passed over it, and I think that was a good decision because I have not found myself thinking about this palette since then, and that blue that was sucking me in, I created a similar look here for a much more affordable price. When Juvia's Place came out with their holiday releases, they had a purple palette, the Nubian Royal, which I ended up grabbing. I have since decluttered that out of my collection, and I think I sold it on Poshmark. So it's in someone else's collection now. But I also heavily considered the Nubian Glow. That was the more like orange and gold palette. And I originally thought that I was going to get the Nubian Glow. The reason why I didn't is because I felt like I had those colors, similar colors in my collection already, and I wanted to challenge myself. So I got the purple palette, the Nubian Royal. And I'm really glad that I did not get the Nubian Glow because this may be an unpopular opinion, but Juvia's Place eyeshadows just haven't blown me away the way that they blow other people away. I've heard so many people raving about the formula, so I bought the Nubian Royal. I felt like the formula was okay, but I ended up selling it because I only used it one time for that video and I did not use it since. And then I currently have my taupe palette and I've used it once or twice, and now I'm ready to declutter that out of my collection because I just don't find myself reaching for it. So I think the same thing would have happened for the Nubian Glow. I honestly probably would have ended up selling it, and that's a waste because I don't really like to return makeup if I don't have to, because I think that they just end up throwing it away. But then I'm like buying a palette, using it, paying full price for it, and either gifting it to a friend or selling it for a cheaper price. And then I just feel like it's wasteful. So I'm really glad that I ended up passing on that one. And I don't know how pressed I'm gonna be to try Juvia's Place in the future. I would like to try more from them just because I hear people raving about them, but they just haven't blown me away. The last palette that I'm going to talk about is by Dose of Colors. Now, I had their Marvelous Mauves palette years ago. I felt like it was super powdery. I wasn't a huge fan of it. I used it a little bit and ended up decluttering it. But then they came out with these two palettes here. The Smoky Soiree, which is obviously the smoky one, and then Cutting Edge has like the earthy tones. I really considered getting Cutting Edge. At one point, I think I even had it in my cart on Ulta's website, and I was going to pick it up, and then I reminded myself that I just wasn't in love with the Dose of Colors formula. And I can't speak to this formula here. I don't know if it's the same formula. I don't know if it's different, but I felt like I could replicate those earthy tones in palettes that I already had in my collection. And so I was trying to be a smart consumer, and I passed on it. And ultimately, I have not thought about that eyeshadow palette since, and I haven't really heard anybody talking about it. So it's probably a good thing that I passed on it. And that is going to do it for my 10 eyeshadow palettes that I skipped over. And frankly, I'm glad that I skipped over them. So I would love to know your thoughts down below. Did you pick any of these up? Did you pass over any of them? Do you have any regrets? I would love to know, but if you did enjoy this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed before you go. That way I can see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.